Alright, what's up, bros? I know this is super early. The NBA season still isn't for another 2 months or so, but I'm just fucking hyped already, and I'm ready to make my first tier list. Also, I apologize. I don't know if you guys can see the ads on the side, but I couldn't figure out how to install an ad blocker, so yeah, I'm sorry about that. Alright, let's just get straight into it. And you can see we have the tiers here. So favorites is basically, I'm going to try to keep it to around 4 teams in the favorites, 4 in the contenders, maybe 6 or so in playoffs, 4 to 6 in play-in, and 4 to 6 in not good, and then probably just 4 in the walking dumpster fires. And I think we all know who the walking dumpster fires are, but alright, we'll go in order anyway. I think it's alphabetical here. So the first team that we have is the Atlanta Hawks, and honestly, I think the Hawks are a bit of a tricky one, but what I will say is they somehow managed to walk away with the first overall pick in the draft, and they selected Zachary Riesacher, or however you pronounce it, and he's a small forward / shooting guard, and he can do a lot with the ball. But beyond that pick, which was a good pick, they didn't change much in the offseason, other than shipping off DeJounte Murray after the failed experiment that they tried with him and Young. Now, I think Young is good enough to push the team into the play-in again, so I'm going to put them up in this C category here, but I think the playoffs are a bit too far for them. So, for this year, while Riesacher is still developing and, they're figuring their shit out, I'm going to leave them in C. All right, the Celtics. We all know where the Celtics are going. They are the favorites. They should be the favorites no matter what. At least for this year, they're the team to beat. Next year, some of the sports analysts have actually broken this down, but they get into some shaky financial stuff where they probably have to let somebody go, whether it be D. White or Drew Holiday or somebody, because they literally can't afford everyone. I mean, they're top 5 and top 6 with Al Horford. They're so expensive, and they've proven themselves now, which makes them even more expensive. And, with the Title II Tax Act that the NBA recently instated, it's going to be rough for them. But for this year, absolutely no worries. I truthfully can't see them doing worse than last year. It could be the beginning of a dynasty, let's just be honest. And I know that there's some Celtics haters out there. So just sit back and watch. And if you can't tell, I am a Celtics fan, so I'm not biased at all. All right. Next up is the Brooklyn Nets. This one wasn't too hard for me. It's not fair to say that I have absolutely no expectations for the Nets, although they're really not too far off. But it's funny because if you look at the Nets, they have the makings of a really good team. They have a rising star, they have Cam Thomas, they have quality support pieces in Cam Johnson and Nick Claxton, and they even now have a veteran presence now that they have Bojan Bogdanovic and Dennis Schroeder, who, I don't know, Dennis Schroeder maybe isn't quite a veteran yet, but he's a lot older than a lot of the guys on that team. But the thing is, none of their young talent is developed far enough to be a threat yet, and I don't really see them earning more than 30 wins. And let's also not forget that they traded Mikal Bridges for a ton of firsts, which is a surefire sign that management sees it the same way and that they're maybe going for a bit of a continued rebuild. So we're going to throw them into this D category here. Not good. Alright, next up we have the Hornets. The Hornets are still one of those teams. They're a fucking walking dumpster fire. I don't even remember who these guys drafted, and it doesn't matter because they're still not going to be good. The last time the Hornets were actually good, I was probably screaming at the fucking TV as my brother's Mario Kart character zipped past me at the tender age of 11. That being said though, I think a few years down the road, we might see the Hornets making a push into the playoffs. They're really not that far off, and they have a lot of young talent with a ton of upside. I really liked Brandon Miller's performance last year. I don't remember what he finished on the Rookie of the Year ladder. I think it was, it could have been 3rd. I'm pretty sure it was 3rd. And LaMelo Ball is a great player. He just needs to focus on development. I think he tries to be a bit too flashy sometimes, and it doesn't benefit the team. So, this year the Hornets aren't going anywhere, but a few years out, maybe, just maybe. All right, now we have the Bulls. Damn, we're really just going through a clusterfuck of bad teams here. So the Bulls got worse in the offseason. They might not even make the play-in this year. and I'm dead serious. The best thing they have going for them right now is Kobe White. And, like, I really like Kobe White, but he's not a guy that can actually carry a team. They lost DeMar DeRozan. They gained Josh Giddey, right? Right, guys? Nah. That just feels like slapping a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. Lonzo Ball's potential return is good news, but that wouldn't be until after Christmas, I believe. And it's been nearly 3 years since the guy played, so we shouldn't be expecting anything from him. Overall, I mean, Billy Donovan is a good coach, but there's just not enough there. I mean, who else do they even have? They have Ayo Dosunmu. They lost Caruso. I mean, huge L's. So they're not even going to make the play-in this year, and I'm pretty confident about that. So we're going to throw them right next to the Nets in the not good category. Next up is the Cleveland Cavaliers. So this one is probably going to be the biggest shock of the whole list. I just don't like this team. At the end of the regular season last year, as you may remember, the Cavaliers tanked their last game in order to avoid the 76ers, who are on the bottom half of the bracket due to Embiid's injury. And as a result, they ended up on Boston's side of the bracket, and they got fucking destroyed in the second round. So the way that I viewed it is they were telling the world, we want to win one round, and we don't give a shit what happens afterwards. That gives me such low confidence in the team, and I'm wondering if the players feel the same way. And given that they didn't make any significant changes in the offseason, and the fact of the matter is that I like 6 teams more than the Cavaliers, you know, the one that you might argue with me on is the Magic, but I like the Magic's development upside more than the Cavs. So yeah, I'm going to put the Cavs as play-in contenders. And by the way, play-in contenders just means I think you're going to make the play-in. So you're going to be in that 7, 8, 9, or 10 seed. Yeah, you know, I don't know if the Cavs will actually finish in the play-in, but that's just how it feels to me at the moment. And like I said, I like 6 teams better than them in the Eastern Conference right now. So argue with me all you want in the comments. Alright, next up we have the Dallas Mavericks. I am going to put them as favorites. As a team that got the honor of being walloped by the Celtics in the NBA Finals, I'm sure Doncic and the Mavericks will be hungry for more. The weaknesses of their team were finally exposed in that final series, where we saw Doncic's inability to defend and the inability to hide him really up against a team where every position has tremendous offensive skill. And you know, that's more unfortunate than the fault of anyone, because the Celtics are just one of those teams right now. But the Mavericks did land Klay Thompson, Spencer Dinwiddie in the offseason, 2 pieces that help out offensively and provide championship experience, but they are more of a detriment than help defensively. The Mavericks have a long road ahead of them, but if Luka takes a step forward defensively and basically Kyrie plays any better than he did last season in the finals, I think they have a real shot here. We could see another Celtics-Mavericks finals, and they'll have a chance at redemption. Denver Nuggets, also favorites. This one doesn't require a lot of explanation. I don't see any real reason to bump the Nuggets down a tier. They largely chose to run it back, and they even picked up Westbrook, who will provide good value off the bench, given that their bench was the biggest issue they had last year. They did lose Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which isn't good. We can just be frank about that. That's not good. He was one of their key pieces, and one of the only solid role guys that they had. But, you know, it's Jokic, it's the 3-time MVP, it's Murray, the clutch guy, it's Gordon, the absolute glue guy, it's still Michael Porter Jr., who's developed his game a lot, and I have a hard time, like I said, I have a hard time bumping them down a tier. I know the last playoffs didn't go how they hoped, but there were a lot of factors that went into that, and sometimes it's just not your year. So there's no reason, in my mind, to not have them as favorites. The Detroit Pistons. The largest walking dumpster fire, maybe in the history of the... Okay, no, that's a bit too far, probably. But yeah, no expectations for this team. Another year, another tragedy, really. Best odds in the lottery, and they somehow walk away with the 5th pick. I deeply feel for any Pistons fans out there. If you're watching this, know that I hear you, man. I feel your pain. I'm sorry. You do have bright spots. Cade Cunningham, he has his development being hampered, though, by literally just being surrounded by an awful team. Like, how is the guy supposed to grow? There are some other bright spots. Oscar Thompson looked really good towards the end of last season. Malachi Flynn had that random 50-point game when he was on the Raptors last year, and now he's on the Pistons. And, you know, Monty Williams, he might be overrated, but he's still a good coach. I don't think there's any chance they do as bad as they did last year. They had that historic L streak. It was like almost 30 games, wasn't it? Anyway, yeah, they won't escape the inevitable 15-67 season. Any better than that is a victory. All right, moving on to the Warriors. So with the game-changing addition of Kyle Slow-Mo Anderson, the Warriors have elevated themselves to favorites. Yeah, just kidding. It is truly the end of an era over in San Francisco. But Warriors fans, you should not be upset. It's been an incredible run for Curry, and I hope he chooses to close out his final seasons with the team he began with. The Warriors' roster has some bright spots in Trace Jackson-Davis and Podziemski, but anything beyond the play-in would be surprising. And I'm going to leave them as not good because they lost Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins is on the decline and Steph Curry is fucking old and I don't see many bright spots. Au revoir to a dynasty. Houston Rockets. Alright, I'll be honest, this one was a really hard choice to make, but I'm taking a gamble because I think the Rockets are a playoff team. This roster has a ceiling of about 1,000,000 miles. I really liked what I saw from Jalen Green after the All-Star break last year, and if he continues that into next season, the Rockets are truly a force to be reckoned with. Now, it's way too early for them to be contending, and the West is obviously a loaded conference, but I definitely see them being, the 6th seed, maybe even higher, but 6th seed feels like a good spot for them. There was a point last year where we thought the Rockets could end up being the 4th or 5th seed, but they just couldn't hold on, and maybe they can this year. I really wouldn't be surprised. Alright, the Pacers are in a similar spot to the Rockets, actually, so we're going to put them into the playoffs. Now, as much as I'd love to ride the Pacers' momentum into next season after making the Eastern Conference Finals, there's teams in the East that are qualified to be contenders than the Pacers. I love this roster, I really do, and in a few years we might be talking about a Pacers championship, but they're definitely not there yet, and there's some missing pieces that are required. The Clippers are also a playoff team, so let's just keep chugging them along, I guess. The Clippers took a significant step back with the loss of Paul George, but they're still a quality team. This year doesn't look like a year where they'll make it past a round or maybe 2 in the playoffs, but it could be a great year still for the development of guys like Amir Coffey and Terrence Mann. And of course they still have Harden and Leonard, who are still capable despite their increasing age. Now, knowing Harden, I could be completely proven wrong there and he could come out and just be a complete disaster, maybe even having some attitude issues again as well, but I'm not ready to say that yet. I mean, the guy did step up when he was traded to the Clippers last year, so it remains to be seen. The Lakers. Oh, how desperately I want to put the Lakers into not good. Nah, I can't do it. Yeah, you see, the Lakers have finally found their saving grace, and that man is, of course, Bronny James. Okay, in all seriousness, I have no doubt that I'll place the Lakers in this tier even because it's what every rational basketball fan would do, and then they'll somehow end up in the Western Conference Finals again. So take this as my apology in advance. LeBron and AD. LeBron is fucking ancient, and AD is getting up there too, but it's LeBron and AD. They won a championship together. I feel like it's wrong to put them in the not good category. I also kind of feel like it's wrong to even place them in the play-in contenders, but the truth is they will end up in the play-in tournament. They'll win, they'll get to the conference finals, everybody will be freaking out, and then they'll collapse again. So that's just how I see it. Alright, the Grizzlies. I'm high on the Grizzlies. I think Ja Morant's game is absolutely transformative, and they still have guys like Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane. They have so many young guys, and the back of their bench got so much development last year with the insane amount of injuries this team had. Now, I'm a Zach Edey hater, and I did not like that draft selection because, he has no fucking purpose on their team. They have Steven Adams, they have Jaren Jackson Jr. What are they going to do with Zach Edey? But, that's the only quibble I can come up with. So, I'm putting the Grizzlies in the playoffs, and this does rely on Morant being healthy and, all of these new guys being able to find the chemistry, but I think they can do it because they've proven themselves a few times now. The Miami Heat. Here we go. Here we go. Oof. This one's tough. I'm actually going to put the Heat in the playoffs. I think that we might see a really, really good Heat roster in a year or two when the final seasons of Butler's career are converging with Bam's and Hero's prime, and players like Himi Hawkes and Nikola Jovic continue to blossom, but we're not quite there. But Heat culture is still a freaking insane thing. And even though the Heat probably don't figure to end up much higher in the standings than their eighth place finish last year, determination can carry a team far, as we saw during the 2023 playoffs. I'm actually going to move them down to the play-in. This is tough. This is definitely a tough choice. But yeah, it's hard for me to put the Heat in the playoffs. It really depends. It depends on the Magic and the Cavs. And I think that the Heat, the Cavs, and the Magic will all be close in record, but ultimately I'm going to keep the Heat as the 7th seed, but they could sneak up into the 6th. I don't feel great about that one, but they're there for now. All right, the Bucks. The Bucks didn't really change anything this summer, but I am sure that they're going to have some more chemistry between Dame and the rest of the team. And I think they'll mesh a little bit better this year. But it is true that defense is still a huge issue. And Doc Rivers just isn't the move. They started beating teams at the end of last season, and it was like, oh, Doc's got it figured out. They should at least win a round or two. Nope. And that's now the second straight first-round exit for the Bucks. And that's got to do bad things to a team's confidence, especially a team that hasn't made many big changes. They're contenders. Don't get me wrong. They're contenders. But I honestly don't see another championship for Giannis if he remains in Milwaukee. And the Bucks can't beat the Celtics right now. The Timberwolves, they're contenders. And some people might be upset with me for not putting them as favorites. And they're definitely close. They drafted Rob Dillingham, who could end up being a sleeper pick. But otherwise, their core remains largely the same, with some bench changes that probably won't affect their success too much. Their defense will surely remain at the top of the league, and if Edwards elevates his game even further, then they belong in the next tier up. But I'm not ready to assume that he will do that yet. So for now, they're contenders, and this is one that I could definitely be proven wrong on. All right, the Pelicans. Yeah, I think the Pelicans are still playing contenders. I know they ended up in the playoffs last year, and I know they got DeJounte Murray over the offseason, who I actually think is a good fit for them, but there's simply too much talent in the West for a team that just hasn't really worked for a few years now. Add on to that Zion's injury issues and McCollum's growing age, and I don't really see this team making it past the play-in. They had a game or two where they looked like they could beat the Thunder, but it just never came through, and the Thunder ended up being much better than them in the end. All right, the Knicks. I'm so fucking high on the Knicks. I'm sorry, the Knicks are favorites. The Knicks are fucking favorites, dude. Talk about a fucking well-built roster. In my opinion, Mikal Bridges is an excellent addition to the roster. Normally, when you bring in four incredible talents to a team, you have the issue of too many mouths to feed. Phoenix. But because these guys are all so unique in their own ways and willing passers, that issue just isn't present here. So I'm looking for Brunson to continue his rise and for Bridges to fall back into the supportive but incredibly impactful role he had on the Suns. And if those two things happen and the roster stays healthy, I'm going to be honest, the Knicks have a clear shot at the title. But let's not forget that last thing, health. Tom Thibodeau is a really good coach, but I don't understand why people brush off his load management policies. We have evidence now that his guys are getting injured. It just doesn't make sense anymore. But anyway, I haven't even talked about guys like Josh Hart and DiVincenzo yet, so yeah, the Knicks are definitely in a good place. All right, the Thunder. The Thunder are also going to be contenders for me. Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. What amazing pickups. Just when you thought the future of this team couldn't get any scarier, it got scarier. I'm not sure who can actually beat this team on paper, but they're still pretty inexperienced, and again, the West is loaded. They took it to 6 with the Mavericks, and they fought hard, but Luka was Luka, and that could happen again. All of those games were pretty close, and if there was a rematch, it might go in the Thunder's favor. I still don't trust the squad to make it all the way, and that's why they're not favorites. That being said, I could be proven wrong, and it wouldn't shock me. This was a pretty hard decision, and next year the story is definitely going to be different. And this is one of those teams that is setting themselves up for a true dynasty. But they have to play their cards right, and this year could be a defining factor for that. The Orlando Magic. I am also high on the Orlando Magic, and they are a playoff team for me. Now, it's pretty simple. I like the roster. I like the coach. I like the Magic to continue to improve in an Eastern Conference with still just a few actual solid teams. I like them more than the Cavs and more than the Pacers, although just barely. They added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which is a huge help for their offensive efficiency woes. And really all they need is for Franz Wagner to get back on track to win a playoff series. So I do like their chances a lot. The 76ers, man oh man, they're going to be contenders, okay? They're going to be contenders. Now, let's talk about them, okay? Paul George and the 76ers, what an amazing combination. I'm sure the playoffs won't be a disaster again. Okay, but for real, it doesn't seem wise for this franchise to go and pick up a guy who performs subpar in the playoffs. Either way, don't get me wrong, this team is a contender on paper, and us foolish basketball fans will continue to give the 76ers the benefit of the doubt until trust the process is a way distant memory. Now, I am really interested in the kind of year Tyrese Maxey has. After his 2 breakout campaigns, this is the year that defines if he blossoms even further into a superstar or remains where he is as an already exceptional offensive threat with a bright future, but not quite there. So yeah, look for the 76ers to disappoint Philly once again this year. Alongside the Eagles again, I'm sure. Poor city. Poor city, man. I feel for you guys. Alright, the Phoenix Suns. I'm really tempted to throw the Suns into not good, but I think they're playing contenders. The Suns didn't change shit during the offseason, and because they didn't change shit, I'm not changing shit. They won't get past the first round of the playoffs. I don't like this team, and as dominant as Durant is, he's a bit too ball dominant for the likes of Booker and Beal. So for this team to work, you'd have to ask those guys to drop into like catch and shoot roles, and I'm sorry, but I don't think that's going to happen. Playing my turn, your turn works when you're talented, but it only works during the regular season, and that's exactly what we saw against the Timberwolves in the last year's playoffs. The Trailblazers, we all know where the Trailblazers are going. Whoop! Walking dumpster fire. Again, not much needs to be said here, and if you were questioning this decision, get a fucking grip. Donovan Clingan was a good draft choice, and the Trailblazers should focus their efforts on continuing to develop him, Scoot, and Anthony Simons. And they also grabbed Denny Avdia, who has actually turned into a really solid young player. So the future could be bright if they play their cards right, but it's definitely not that time yet. So don't even get me fucking started. Do not come into my comments saying that the Trailblazers are a play-in team, which I have seen some people say, which is insane. They're not. Alright. The Kings. I'm also pretty high on the Kings. So they grabbed DeRozan, and the few years that man has left in the league could now propel this team to the near top of the West. I'm not prepared to say they're contenders, but I also wouldn't be surprised. Keegan Murray will continue to develop, and the pairing of Fox and Sabonis has been marvelous so far. Now, will it be enough to beat out the clusterfuck of talent-loaded Western Conference teams? I don't think so, but I'm positive that they'll be better than last year. Their momentum, which really began rolling in the 2022 season, was stunted a little bit with their play-in loss last season, but I don't think it's going to be enough to truly derail the train. Light the beam, baby! Alright, we have the Spurs, and the Spurs are a team that are a little bit better than last year, so they're going into the not good category. So I like the addition of Chris Paul. He can be a mentor to Wemby. And they also added Harrison Barnes, but I don't think that really affects their chances much. Give me one more year of development of Wemby, of course, but more importantly of guys like Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell. And I think this team becomes a real threat. But they definitely still need that year, and for now I wouldn't be expecting many wins. The Raptors are another team that I'm kind of high on, I'll be honest. For that reason, they're actually going to go in the play-in contenders category. Now, this might be a bit of a surprise, but let me explain. So I know this is going to be a controversial pick, but I'm pretty high on the Raptors. Scotty Barnes is going to take another jump. And let's not forget Barrett and Quickly. Quickly is a really good point guard. And I think if he gets a little momentum, there's no looking back. Does this mean that the Raptors will make the playoffs? Like, no, definitely not. But I wouldn't be shocked if they sneak into the 10th seed. And I definitely like them better than the Nets and Bulls for that appearance. So that's my take. All right, the Jazz. Y'all are going to hate me. Like, you're really going to hate me, but the Jazz are going into the last tier. They're not a walking dumpster fire, okay? So let me just get that straight. They're not a walking dumpster fire. But that being said, they're down here because somebody has to be. They're also down here because even though they've proven that they can really play and they have an excellent coach. They've also proved that they might be looking to keep rebuilding instead of going for it yet. They proved that last year. They proved that last year when, after a decent winning streak, they just started tanking games. Now, if they come out the gates rolling, don't be surprised if this team can finish as high as the top of the play-in, because they're good. I mean, they have so much young talent. They have Markkanen, who's really blossomed. They have John Collins, Walker Kessler. I mean, they're a good team, but they have to actually play like it. All right, and that just leaves the Washington Wizards, who I'm actually not going to put as a walking dumpster fire, because they actually made some notable improvements. They drafted Alex Sarr, and they added Malcolm Brogdon and Jonas Valanciunas. I mean, those are good pieces. And with some luck, I could even see this team kicking the likes of the Hawks out of the play-in, but that does seem less likely than likely. And then, of course, Jordan Poole, a complete liability. He might come out with a bounce-back season and remind us all what he's capable of. And if he does that, I could be scared of this team in the future. But putting my chips on Jordan Poole is not something that I'll be partaking in anytime soon until he actually does it. Alright, so that's the tier list.